What's up, folks? Welcome back to another edition of The Press. I'm your evocative, provocative, talkative host, EJ, and today we're doing something a little different. In the past, I've done my Rambling On About series, where I pick a news article, a tweet, a topic, and just ramble on about it for 20 minutes. I've done everything from the Captain Marvel movie to an April Fool's prank about a digital telegram machine. So, after a while, I realized you guys deserve more. You guys deserve a little more attention. You guys deserve a little bit more preparation. So with that in mind, I wanted to start a new occasional series called The Written Word, where I pick a word specifically pertaining to writing and expand on that. I actually figure out exactly what I'm going to say, because in the past, they've all been off the cuff. This is going to be more preparation, a little more production value as I go through this. So, with that in mind, I'd like to start our first written word on something that I think will come up a lot in the future, which is dogma. Now, you might be wondering, why the heck are you starting with dogma? Well, I'll tell you. It's because I'm a dogmatic person. I have a core set of beliefs that I hold to. I stand very firmly in those beliefs, and when somebody challenges me on them, I get defensive. It's something that I'm working on, and being able to relate to people more effectively and being able to open my mind to an extent. That being said, dogma is not necessarily bad, because again, dogma is just having a core set of beliefs outside of yourself that you fall back on to guide your actions. Any religion has its dogma. Any code of law is, in a sense, a dogma. It's just a question of how firmly you hold to that, and most people see it as a bad thing when dogma overcomes compassion, when you lose the ability to think empathetically while dealing with a person because you've fallen back on your dogma. But dogma, one, is not always bad. It's good to have a set of codes and rules you can fall back on in cases of stress, because then you don't have to think as much. And two, sometimes dogma's right. Sometimes the law is in place for a good reason. Sometimes religious rules are in place for a good reason. As a Christian, I firmly believe that God knew what he was doing when he gave us the Bible. So, I want to preface everything I'm going to say in these future things by saying I have a codified set of beliefs and I see the world through those. So don't be surprised when I say this is the way it is if you disagree. At the end of the day, the open mind has to close down on something, just like an open mouth. So, we're kind of fighting the stereotype here with dogmatic characters. We are fighting a bit of stigma. You say dogma, immediately you think Frollo from The Hunchback of Notre Dame. You think any hard-boiled cop out to get our vigilante hero. You think the Pope, for those of you with a less than stellar view of the Catholic Church. Or you think someone like John MacArthur, for a less than stellar view of Protestants. Someone who is an authority figure. And so because we have something of an anti-authority stance in a lot of cases, we automatically associate dogma with authority, we associate dogma with abuse of power, we associate dogma with a negative thing. Now, that's not to say that because I think John MacArthur is dogmatic, he's a bad person. Or because I think the Pope is dogmatic, he's a bad person. Or because Frollo was dogmatic, he was a bad character. No. On the contrary, I think Frollo was a great character. Terrible person, but a great character. I think the Pope... I have opinions on the Pope, and we're not going to go into them. And I think John MacArthur is a great person. I think he's a very good person because he holds to his dogma. So dogma in and of itself is not bad. And I think that's something that's going to come up in a lot of these videos as well, is that the concepts I'm discussing are not in and of themselves bad, but when they are used in a certain way, they can either be good or bad for a story. So the reason I think dogma can be good for a story is because it adds drama and it adds realism. It adds drama because these are characters who are very set in their ways. They are very proactive in enforcing those ways. They would not just like to live their own lives, but they would like everyone else to live their lives by these rules. They think they know what is best, whether they do or not, and they are going to ensure that that is what is enacted by everyone around them. So they add some drama, they add progression, they add friction between characters. They also add realism because people are like that in real life. There are dogmatic people. Not everyone is open-minded to new ideas. Not everyone sees a situation and says, let's figure this out as we go. Some people have very set things. And so we want to be careful that we beware the straw man as we're going into this. We want to beware the idea that all dogmatic characters are just a bunch of Frolos. They're all just a bunch of people who are abusing their power and abusing the rules to get what they want, like a bunch of Pharisees or something. We want them to have some depth to them. So we want to be able to humanize dogmatic characters. And I think there's two major ways that you can do this. You need, first of all, and there are several sub-points that I'll get into, but the two major ways that I've been able to kind of synthesize as I've thought about this are that you need to establish their dogma in context. So first of all, you need to show that they are dogmatic. That's pretty easy. All you have to do is have, let's go with a no-nonsense cop, because this is something that shows up a lot in works, whether it's the buddy cop, whether it's a detective drama, anything like that, the no-nonsense, by the book, by the rules cop. You can establish them very simply at the start of your story. You can show them giving someone a parking ticket when they're 2 minutes late for their thing. When they're running up, as the meter ticks over, they slap the ticket on it. That's a dogmatic character. That's somebody who lives his life by the rules, who says, this is exactly the way the rules state, and I saw you coming. I knew you were going to be late. I gave you the ticket anyway. That's a dogmatic character. That establishes it, but it's not established in context. So context implies, one, that there's a reason for him doing it. He needs to have a source for his dogma. For him, it's the law. For another character, it might be their religious code. For another, it might just be what their dad taught them or what their mom taught them, and they always go by that. But they have to have something to fall back on. They have to have an actual code of actual ethics that this is what I do. Not just, I'm a jerk at all times and I justify it because I have authority. Because that's a different kind of character. A dogmatic character does bow to authority regardless of what they think of those actions. The other thing is it has to be in the context of the plot. If this dogmatic character is going to be someone who shows up in your story a lot, and I think they do have a lot to bring to the table. So if you want to use them as much as possible, you want to be able to show their actions having an effect on the plot. So let's say your detectives, you've got a dogmatic cop, you've got a by the book, by the rules cop, you've got more of the maverick who's willing to bend or break the rules in order to get the job done, and you've got a middle ground person, someone who isn't really sure what to follow, they're just there to do their job. Let's say these three characters catch a junkie, catch a drug addict, and are interrogating him. The drug addict, the junkie, says, hey, if you let me go, if you let me off, I will show you where my distributor lives. I will show you where I meet him, maybe. I'll show you where the pickup is so you can go and get him, bigger fish, and let me go. The dogmatic character is going to say, no, that's unacceptable. You broke the law. You have to go to jail too, and you're going to tell us where he is. The other character, our maverick character, might say, to heck with that. I don't care about you because I just have the chance to nab the big fish. And the middle of the ground character might say, well, we should do some research. We should figure out where this is going. The dogmatic character will almost always be the first one to speak up. They will almost always have an opinion on something. They will almost always be very strongly rooted in that opinion, and they always think they're right. That's what a dogmatic character is. And so the dogmatic character is going to be the one who advocates for, no, we're not doing this. And this gives your other characters a chance to build and play off of him. And you can characterize the others in the frame of his dogma, because the reader might not know what the maverick cop thinks about certain subjects. They might think maverick cop is fine with traffic violations, hates drugs, or Maverick Cop could be fine with anything as long as they catch the head honcho. Maybe the Maverick Cop only wants a promotion. Who knows? But you can establish that by pitting him against a dogmatic character. So the dogma needs to have an effect on the plot, because this has now become our conflict. Our conflict is now, one, what do we do with the junkie? Two, how do we catch the big guy? So the dogma has now affected the plot. It's now been put in context. We know where his source is, and he's already starting to build the other characters and elevate them just by being there. So the next thing you need to do is give that dogma real consequences. This is my second point here. Give the dogma real consequences, because right or wrong, whether he's correct or incorrect, dogma creates action. Dogmatic characters are not passive. Dogmatic characters will do something, whether it's get their way or maybe go to their superiors and get the whole operation shut down because they need to keep this junkie because he broke the law. Maybe he decides not to go with them in the sting because he can't stand for it on principle. Then you have a chance for that action-reaction as the characters interact and as the plot unfolds. Because maybe they do go with the dogmatic character's way and the big guy gets away. Or maybe they do go with his way and they find another way to catch him. Or maybe they don't go with the dogmatic character's way. Maybe they do release the junkie, set things up. Dogmatic character doesn't go with them because he's not going to stand for it. And they're underprepared. They're not ready to catch the guy because there's one fewer of them. The trio has been split, and now the two are off their rhythm, and so they fail to catch the guy. Or maybe the dogmatic character isn't there, and one of the characters gets killed. The middle of the ground character could die in an ambush set up by the junkie. So the dogmatic character is now justified in their dogma because he now says, see, I told you we shouldn't have trusted this guy. He set us up. And he's guilty because he stayed behind. So now this character is going to have to face a crisis of conscience because if I hadn't stood by my values, my friend would still be alive. Or if you had listened to my values, our friend would still be alive. And he has to juggle those two attitudes now. So being able to use this dogmatic character, even if he's not the main character, and bring something across. Bring across a message about your dogma. And that's the nice thing about writing, and the fact that writing is really just putting your own spin on what someone else has already said. There's nothing new under the sun. So you can say, with your take on this dogmatic character, whether he's the main character or maybe a deuteragonist, maybe he's the secondary main character, maybe he's just a side character who shows up for some of the scenes, maybe half of the scenes. He's a secondary character. But whatever the case may be, you now have a chance to explore, how far do we take rule of law? How far are we willing to go before we have to sacrifice our morals? Which morals do we hold as higher? And you can build off that and say something more than good guys win, crime doesn't pay. So you're able to do that, and you're able to portray even a slow slide for the dogmatic character as they slowly learn either one, my dogma is wrong, or two, they might slide deeper and deeper into their dogma and just get more and more entrenched as things push against them, as circumstances push against them, because they are active characters. They do not stand idly by. As things push against them, they're going to push back harder. They're going to become more intense in their dogma, or maybe they'll change. That is up to you to decide as you see fit as the author. You are in control of the characters. But you have several other bonuses to a dogmatic character as well. Now that we've seen their dogma in context, so we've humanized them, we've shown them as more than just a straw man, and we've given it real consequences, and their actions affect both other people and themselves. And so now we can take a look at how do the others react. You know, other people might look at it and say, you could have your maverick cop who's like, no, you just on principle, I dislike you. Or you could have your in the middle person who's jobbing or who's good spirited, doesn't always go with the law and says, you know, normally I'm with you, but in this case I'm not. Or normally I'm against you, but in this case you're right. This is the way to go. And so they're usually type A personalities, dogmatic characters are. And so they can add friction. It's very easy to build a conflict around them. It's also very easy to straw man them. So you have to be careful that you're not portraying it unfairly. They have to be portrayed sympathetically if you want it to not be a straw man. And I don't mean sympathetically in the sense of they're right, but just sympathetically in the sense of we are presenting them as more than just automatically wrong because they're dogmatic. If someone is just wrong because he holds to a code of ethics, then you've made a straw man. Your dogmatic characters should have more to them than that. And a way to do that is look at the ideology versus the dogma. which is basically the spirit of the law versus the letter. Which comes first in your dogmatic character's mind? Because you might say, well, he's dogmatic. It's the letter of the law. Maybe he believes in the spirit of the law and he feels that the letter is the best way to uphold it. Maybe he feels that I want to do the most good I can, and the best way to do that is to become an officer of the law and uphold the law. He's not dogmatic because he thinks the dogma is in and of itself intrinsically good. He's dogmatic because he feels that is the best way to accomplish the greater good. Maybe he does care more for the letter of law than spirit. Maybe he is order first, good second. Maybe he is seeking to accomplish something by his dogma, but he doesn't care about the spirit of it. He just knows this is the path to this solution, and so I'm going to take this path. He's more mechanical in his approach. That's another way to look at it. You might even ask, do they like to be dogmatic? This ideological dogmatic character who's doing it for the spirit of the law, he might look at the law and say, you know what, there are things that the law gets wrong, but most of it is right, and I have sworn an oath to uphold it, so I'm going to uphold it. Or maybe he's just following orders. Maybe he's saying, you know what, I don't like this. I'm just following orders. I am doing this because it's my job, and I'm going to do my job, and I'm not going to get fired because I have to provide for my family. I don't like it. Or maybe they love being dogmatic. Maybe they're like, this is the best way to do something. This is the optimal way to accomplish my goal, to uphold law and order, to establish moral fiber in a community, to do whatever your dogmatic character wants to accomplish, because they have a goal. They don't just, very few of them are dogmatic for its own sake. Most of them are dogmatic because they believe it is the way to get something or to achieve something. It's not always self-centered either. Dogma can be externally motivated. Again, in the case of the by the book cop, might be doing it because he believes it's the best route to law and order. And another really simple way to establish this dogmatic character's human is to just ask why. Just ask what made them this way. Deepen the character with a little bit of exploration of their backstory. Maybe they were early in their career, they were like the Maverick, and they'd made a mistake, and they said, from now on, I'm just going by the book because then it's not my fault. Maybe they had a mentor who taught them that the letter of the law is above all else, and that law is to be upheld and encouraged, and so they go and follow in that mentor's footsteps. Great ways to challenge them there are to say, well, this mentor screwed up here. Great ways to challenge them there are, your following the letter of the law has gotten people in trouble too. And so you can humanize them and make them question their decisions by exploring why they make those decisions and why they hold those views in the first place. So with all that said, dogmatic characters really, I truly, genuinely believe, bring a whole lot to the table in terms of writing, because they add drama, they add realism, they add conflict. They can push that plot along in ways that a passive or maverick character can't. And so you're able to build on that because they have a core guideline. You're able to get your audience in easy with them. They know what they're doing, and so you can contrast them with other characters and with other events. They're very interesting to develop because they are always having to defend and justify their actions. They're always having to question whether what they believe is the right call. So next time you're writing something and you think, man, I wish I had a character that could just automatically bring conflict every time, but all my happy-go-lucky kids or all my maverick characters, they don't care what anyone else does, and so I can't get them to conflict with each other. Throw a little dogma in there. Maybe you want to say, you know what, at the end of the day, there are certain things that are just good. Throw a little dogma in there, because now you have to question, why are they good? Now you have to question, is just blindly following them as good as understanding and appreciating why they're good? And you can build on that, and your story will be better for it. This has been The Written Word with EJ. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, folks. Hey, did you enjoy the content? Well, go ahead and like the video and subscribe. It'll really help out the channel. Thanks.